Mental Health Mondays. So, as I mentioned in other videos, hyper-individualism leads to loneliness. This is not a big surprise because this is what I would predict if we have, as I believe, social instincts. The drive to power that, say, Alfred Adler talked about is also a part of the drive towards narcissism, but what we've yet to really see is that it clashes with the social instincts, and that the longing for secure and reliable social connections and the lack thereof actually causes a lot of emotional pain, which, if we talked about elsewhere, is very, very similar to physical pain. It uses the same neural circuitry, in other words. Now, as we've talked about already, the loneliness, depression, and self-harm have increased sharply since the early 2010s, according to a 2021 meta-analysis by Twenge et al. These folks reviewed the research from various sources across 37 different countries. Twenge et al. Noticed that 2012 seemed to be a critical period when smartphone use increased dramatically and has become very widespread ever since. They reviewed several different studies which show that adolescents began to spend less time with each other in person and more time using digital media. Drawing from the research from others in 2013, appears to demonstrate that digital media does not produce as much emotional closeness as in-person interaction does. That's not a huge surprise, but it is interesting to see that that is what the results of the study showed as well. So Twenge concluded that the dramatic rise in smartphone use may actually be a contributor to the sharp increases in loneliness and self-harm among adolescents. Now, those folks that were adolescents at the time of that study are now entering adulthood. In 2021, Twenge's study found too that school loneliness increased with greater student access to smartphones. When they use the internet more per weekday, in even controlling for environmental factors like unemployment, family size, income inequality, as those factors tend to affect adults more than adolescents, and which, by the way, is that necessarily a good thing? I don't think so, but nevertheless, is this causation or merely correlation? So Twenge et al. Suggested is causal. And she suggested that because she was drawing from research that demonstrates that social interaction is often disrupted by smartphone use. Social media creates exclusionary cultures, especially among girls, and this may directly contribute to the loneliness. Twenge et al. Draws from her earlier research on individuals that well-being appears to be ideal when technology is used in a small amount, that is neither non-use nor excessive use. There was a dip there. And if you looked at the graph and you compared smartphone use with overall mental health, mental well-being, or I should say depression, right? The higher that it is the scale, the more depression there is. Then it's at zero use, it was small, but it went down a little bit with a modest amount of use. And then it went up in a linear fashion after that. And a modest amount of use was a few minutes a day, and that's it. Not hours on hours of scrolling all day long. Interesting. So it seems that the hyper-individualistic values that led to the widespread use of smartphone technology has been an accelerating factor in the already increasing isolation that was going on prior to their invention. And I think it's important to point out here that I'm not saying that social media is bad in and of itself. It's just like anything else. It's a tool, it's a technology. We have to be careful about how we use it, and it can be misused even though we don't necessarily know that it's causing problems. In this particular instance, the ginormous social media companies have figured out through very clever advertising techniques using the smartest psychologist on the planet, that when they present things a certain way, they keep people attached and scrolling and going on and on and on, because that's what brings in the revenue. All right, that's just That's just the way that it works. That's just how a system that is rewarding a company that is bringing in profit, they're going to do whatever it takes. What we have to do as consumers is recognize that we have the control to turn this on or off, but there's those apps are designed to be addictive. And I think if we step back and look at the fact that our social instincts are what are being used against us in those instances, we have to practice a little something called moderation. And hopefully we'll do better from that perspective when we're able to do that for ourselves. And it is for ourselves, but it's for others too as well. It's particularly the younger generation that's coming in. They model their behavior after what those older generations of us do. So that's Mental Health Mondays today. If you like this stuff, click the like button, subscribe, all that. Go to ericgoodwyn.com and get podcasts and other things you can't get here on YouTube. Sign up for the newsletter, all that jazz. And until then, I'll see you next time.